Welcome everyone to Broomball Canada's podcast, Name Between the Pipes. Again, we are your hosts for this fourth season. My name's Cameron. I'm the goalie for Lacombe and coach for several teams. And with me, I have retired goalie and president of the SBA and the CBF, Chad Schneider. Chad, how's it going?
Good. Cam, yourself?
Not too bad. Pretty cold
Good.
out here. Very snowy this week.
I heard, yeah. I talked to George Brown today, and he was outside shoveling snow in his driveway. He said close to 10 centimeters, he figured. I think.
Yeah, it wasn't a huge accumulation. It's just the roads were terrible this morning. An hour drive took me 2 hours, so that was pretty annoying, especially when you don't get paid for your drive. So, all right, let's talk broomball now. So tonight we are speaking with one guest who is trying to grow the sport in their community, and they live with you, out in Saskatchewan. Not with you, but in the same province as you, the same
Same
vicinity.
province. Yep.
So hopefully they have some ideas about what can spark for other people to bring broomball back into the spotlight in their areas. So who do we have with us?
We have Mr. Scott Goulet. Scott is he's been involved with broomball for a long time. He was part of the CBF at one point when it first started, and had lots to do with the high performance program back in the day in the 90s, putting together some stuff. Also helped out with some theory levels for coaching when we first started doing the coaching stuff. So he's been involved quite a bit. He was actually the executive director or assistant executive director for the Saskatchewan Brewball Association at one point, till he moved on to sports science. And now he is retired and he's back with the Saskatchewan Broomball Association, helping us drive some membership and get our numbers up, and trying to figure out if we can get some more interest. So welcome,
Awesome.
Scott.
Hello, guys.
Can
Awesome.
you hear us all right?
Yes.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay,
Perfect.
good. So welcome to our humble little podcast, where me and Cam will try not to beat up on you too much, but you will get a little bit of ribbon, guaranteed. So, like we always do when we start our podcast off, is tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into broomball.
Oh boy. How I got into broomball. At 12, I went to high school in Bruno, Saskatchewan, and everybody knows that's where the Axemen originate from. And I never did play with the Axemen. Because when we started off, we were in a intermediate league, or at that time it was called B broomball. And when you went to Bruno school, which the so-called high school was grade 7 to 12, small little town, um, you had to play broomball at noon hour. There was no questions, you didn't question it, you just played it because everybody else played it. So we were lucky enough to have the high school and at the rink at that time all in the same lot. So we all went over there, and I was playing 12 years old in grade 7, playing against grade 12, 18-year-olds. And at that time, I was a hockey player. And so I didn't have any broomball equipment, so they stuck me in net. And so that was my initiation to broomball. From there, I just kept on playing in the school during the intramural program. And at that time, we had it was called the Humboldt and Bruno District Broomball League, and broomball was big. I'm old, so broomball was big in the late 70s and early 80s in that area, and every grade had a team in the men's league. So it was kind
Wow.
of unique. It just kind of the way it went. It was a B or an intermediate league at that time, and if you got good enough, you went and played in the Saskatoon, I guess, elite league or A league at that time. And you got picked up to play every once in a while or whatever. So that's kind of how I got initiated into broomball. My very first broomball game was on a dugout near my farm, and I fell in love with it. Although it was kind of funny, my dad didn't. He couldn't believe I was actually playing broomball instead of hockey. So that's how I got involved at the very grassroots, basic level. went on to play men's A or elite in Regina and at nationals. Um, my involvement with the Broomball Association in Saskatchewan started off after post-secondary education. I got a job with the Saskatchewan Broomball Association as their high performance coach slash technical director. And that was the start of my love for not only, well, not just the love of the game, but helping out, volunteering, being on various committees and so on and so forth, to the point where I'm back at it again at the age of 59, turning 60 in a few weeks. So um, can't leave the sport, love it too much, and I'll continue to do it.
And we're grateful
That's
for it.
awesome. So wow, I can't believe how much broomball you had in schools. I mean, just recently, kind of foreshadowing for a future podcast we'll have. We had a local tournament in our area between different schools, but it was really just each school had one or two teams. Now you're saying that there used to be every grade had a team. That's crazy. What does the broomball scene look like now in your province of Saskatchewan? Is there any school broomball going on anymore, or is it just leagues, or what's it look like out there?
There's not really. I mean, I'm not sure if some of the towns that have that play broomball have it in their their intramural system, but Saskatchewan right now is the minor programs are based out of just community involvement or that type of situation. So, for example, the Bruno, Odessa, Big Rivers, Debden's, those sort of things, Aberdeen, smaller towns have local teams, much like minor hockey is. It's not associated with the school system. And they get together once every couple times a month, December, January, February, have tournaments of various age categories, and then they get together for their various age provincials, and that's how it kind of works. There's really nothing in the school system like I think Ontario and Quebec possibly have a bit of a school system, or not a bit, a pretty good school system going, but in Saskatchewan, it's totally club based.
Yeah, that's what ours in Ontario is as well. It's just in the last year we had two schools play against each other just for the first time ever, and then this year we had four schools play against each other, where they kind of took players from local leagues that happened to go to that school and made like a fun little tournament for them,
Oh,
which is
that's
cool to
that's
see. And we'll have a guest on in the future. Vero will be able to explain more about it, but it's kind of growing, which is awesome, because we never had it in the schools before. But we do have our junior programs at least weekly games. Like my 5-year-old plays every single week with a bunch of other 5 and 6 year olds, 4, 5, 6 year olds and stuff. So that's cool. So how does the scene look now compared to how it looked 10 years ago, 20 years ago? I know back when my dad was playing in the 80s and stuff, it was huge, and it kind of has slowed down a bit. And out here, it's growing back up again. Is that the same case for out in Saskatchewan? Or?
Yeah, I would say the senior age category has kind of stayed stable over the last 10 years. There's been the same 3 or 4 or 5 men's teams. Uh, the women's, same thing. I think there's 5 or 6 teams in the women's category in the senior age. I think it's the Broomball Association's membership has declined over the last number of years for various reasons. But I do think when I go out and one of the things I still do, and one of the uh, uh, when Chad and the Broomball Association here in Saskatchewan approached me to try and do something to help kind of get the membership going or increase membership, um, my head started going around about 1,000 miles an hour, thinking, what approaches should we use? Uh, and I'm finding that there is interest out there, and it's like any community, it takes leadership within the community
Mhm.
to keep it going. Or if there is interest, or if a son or a daughter has interest, or some kids that play hockey right now or maybe haven't played hockey and they want to do something, when I do a school clinic, they come up to me after and say, "This sport's really cool. It was fun. I didn't realize the shoes were like this on the ice. I thought it was stupid until I tried it." And then once they try it, they love it. And so then I talk to a phys ed teacher, and of course the phys ed teacher is so bogged down with running a million programs already in the school. So you try and follow up with the phys ed teacher and to say, is there a parent? Well, there could be, but I mean, that's what it really takes, is a parent or somebody in the community to kind of grab it and go with it. And the communities right now in Saskatchewan that are really strong all have good community involvement. Um, and that's what it takes. So, right
Yeah.
now in Saskatchewan, there's probably 7 or 8 communities that really have so-called grabbed the ball, so to speak, and those communities are quite strong. Um, so I think that's the struggle right now we're maybe having in Saskatchewan is places that used to have broom ball. I've approached them and they're all people my age and their kids are maybe 30 years old and they have kids who are 5, 6, 7 years old that are involved in hockey or club volleyball or dance or something. And so it's hard to kind of infiltrate that's what they've already started.
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned, 5 and 6 year olds playing. I've done a few community come try broomball nights where the kids that show up aren't the 15 and 16 year olds. They're the 10, 11, 9 year olds type of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
they want to play. Like it's just, there's nowhere for them to go right now. Right. So,
Yeah.
um, I know small town like Bruno and Aberdeen, kind of which is close to Saskatoon, they both right now have under 12 programs that I've helped them kind of not help them get started because they were there already, but kind of gave them the little push to keep it going. So I do see that maybe as the next step that we have to go to try and get more kids involved. One of the parents came up to me at one of those clinics and said, why do you only focus on the kids that have quit playing hockey? Why don't you go after the kids that when they're 6 or 7 years old, when they're still trying to make a decision? So um,
Yeah.
it's an interesting way of looking at it. Broomball maybe hasn't done that very well in the past. We always kind of took the leftovers or the kids that
Yeah.
quit hockey or maybe weren't good enough for hockey, but maybe we have to start looking at it a little bit different.
Oh yeah, and I think some of the drive for it, why we were going after the older kids too, was, you know, back when we were struggling, was this fact that, you know what, you can make it to nationals. Like that was a big push for me. I know when I started back in a long time ago, it was you have the opportunity to go to nationals. Like where are you going to do that with hockey in and around where we were, right?
Yeah.
Um, you traveling, get to go to Montreal, we got to go to Newfoundland, as 15, 16-year-old kids getting
Yeah.
go on an airplane and get to go to nationals. That was the huge drive for us. And that's kind of what we focused our basis on by trying to get more membership for us when we were younger, was getting kids, you know, there isn't that in the U16 and the U10s and that there is no drive to get to nationals. However, if we had more competition here, that would fire the competition up, I think, right? So, but yeah,
Yeah, I found that's one of the cool things about this tournament we had between the high schools was it happened to be that there was a lot of kids in those schools that already played broomball because of the local youth leagues, but because it was brought into the schools, there were players that weren't part of the league but played other sports like hockey. That because their school was doing something with it, which offered time out of class or and a whole day to go to a tournament. Anybody's looking for a reason to get out of school, they were able to try it. And I went to go to watch this tournament because I coach some U20 teams, just scouting some players and stuff. And there was 5 kids who were friends with players that I coached. They're like, "Yeah, we're gonna come try out next year. We loved it." And so now, because that they just played this one tournament with their school, they're going to be playing full time next year, which is huge. They probably wouldn't have joined the sport
oh,
otherwise. So it's
Yeah.
I think getting in with the kids and the schools and stuff is huge. It's just getting that foot in the door and getting the communities where you have the like Bruno and stuff. We're getting into those schools in that area and getting other local schools to get on board too, to get tournaments and leagues and stuff going. It's a slow process. Like I said, she started out with 2 schools, and then this year was 4 schools, and I know there's already a fifth that's going to be joining next year. So it's looking good. The trajectory is good, and hopefully that will be able to tell us some more about that in the future. But yeah, it's definitely not easy work, and you need a lot of help from community members and parents and grandparents too. Like I know a local uh, lady in our area, her granddaughter wanted to play broomball, and they used to have a youth league in the area way back when, and she just started one up, and slowly climbing with new members every year. So it's just a slow process sometimes, but once the word gets out there and people come try it, they usually fall in love with the sport. So
Yeah. Well, Scott, you had mentioned that I had approached you, myself, and the association, asking for some help. So, can you tell us a little bit about that project that you're working on and what your role is with that project?
Sure. Yeah, uh, I retired from my previous job. I was working within the Sask sports system here with the uh, kind of the amateur sports system. And when Chad and a few of the Saskatchewan Broomball Association board of directors found out that I was retiring, they came up to me and said, "Hey, do you want a job?" And I said, "No, I'm retiring." uh, so, but after some thinking about it, and Chad knows how much I love the sport, I've done everything from reffing to committees to being on the Broomball or CBF's coaching committee and everything throughout the years. So I just thought this was a great way for myself, because I do love the sport, but to give something back to it. Um, I remember when there was 2,500 members or 3,000 members in Saskatchewan, and we're down to quite a bit less than that. So I just thought, yeah, I'll do this for a while and see how it goes. So I developed a proposal, kind of a plan to the board of directors, and told them this is what I think I'd like to try and do. Um, what I'm finding, I'll get into what kind of my main objectives, but what I'm finding is as I'm going through this, that some of my objectives are not as important as others, and some are more important, and some have just popped up based on my going around the province and finding out what's out there, what's not out there, how interest is going, how things are going to be or how they should be, and maybe how they'll never be, right? So um, yeah, so I developed a plan for the board. I had, I think, 8 primary objectives of where I wanted to try and target certain areas of the province, or certain communities, or certain um, population bases, so to speak. So everything from new Canadians to um, our school loaner kit program, to Indigenous participation that we used to have, and quite a strong community there, and we basically lost them. We used to be involved with their winter games, and they switched from girls broomball to indoor soccer. And I think it was a financial reason. And plus I think it was easier to get participation. Uh, and just working with areas that have broomball right now. For example, some areas that have good minor programs, U20, U16, U14. Why can't we get a mixed team out of our adult, get their parents involved? The parents watch the kids play. Let's get them playing as well too. So some of those things, I had some pretty great grandiose ideas, and some of them I've had to temper back a little bit, because it's more, what I'm finding is, in this first go around, you kind of plant the seed to get there, and then maybe in a year to come or 2 years to come, once they realize that they can do this, and the Broomball Association can help them out with some grants or that type of thing, they might be more receptive to it. One of the things I realized too, I started this project kind of in July, August, and I'm realizing that setting up meetings starting in July and August for September and October, it's too late. The winter programs are already set. Rinks have already booked all their ice time out. So the plan now is, I've approached some various communities. We're going to have meetings in May and June for planning for the fall, so that broomball is not an afterthought, but a real thought going into the winter season. So yeah, so there's one of the other things that we were going to try and do is, I've called it a juvenile graduate program, where we have all these great young athletes graduating out of our U20 programs, and some of them never play again, or we never hear from them again, because they go off to university, or they go off to technical institute, or they whatever. So with our new staff person's help, I think we're going to try and find out all of our graduating players in that age category. Will they let their their name stand or their email address to senior teams that may want to pick them up or whatever. And of course, there's confidentiality issues with that type of thing. But I just find we have three U20 boys teams and 5 or 6 or 4 or 5 or 6 U20, depending on the year, U20 girls teams, and how many of them graduate 4, 5, or 6 each year, and we lose them, right? So uh, not all of them. Some play mixed, some do play senior, but man, it sure be nice to keep them involved somehow. So that's just one idea. Um, one of the big things I'm shooting for is to try and get broomball into the Saskatchewan Winter Games. Years ago, we had it, but it was the senior category, and unfortunately, all crap broke loose in one of the games, and it wasn't a very good scene. And so they basically asked broomball to not come back again. But we're gonna be shooting for the U16 category, and I've already made contact with the Saskatchewan Games Council here in Saskatchewan, and we're hoping to get a demo uh, half game or a half hour somewhere in the games that are being hosted in a couple of years here. And then maybe in 5 or 6 years, when the next Winter Games rolls around, we can apply for um, full participation. It's hard to get into the games. There's ice time issues, there's costs, there's athletes village issues and all that type of thing. So, but I think we will be able to get at least a demo half hour in the next games. And I just think if you're in the Saskatchewan games, your profile increases, 100 times, 100-fold. So it would be great if we can end up doing that.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool and great for visibility at least, and just got to keep some of those rowdy players off the ice. I'd throw some names out there, but I don't want to get in trouble. So, so it sounds like you've got some great plans to get broomball back to where it was in Saskatchewan. So hopefully some of those pan out. Is the one that you're focused on the most to get broomball to its biggest, like your first step? This is the game's the first step, or is it something
Uh,
else?
no, I think the games it's an initial step, but I don't know if that's a step over the next 2 or 3 years that is going to increase membership. I just, and I've talked to Chad and a few other people about it. It's almost like we have to take about 4 steps back to get one step ahead right now. I think we have to kind of go back to and it's hard to go back because you can't go back because times have changed and technology has changed, and young kids now have way more to do rather than just go out and play sports. Everybody holds a phone or a computer in their hand all day, and it's hard to get kids involved.
Mhm.
In Saskatchewan, and I'm sure it's the way it was in many provinces, broomball used to be, and it still is, very much a rural based sport. Even if
Yeah.
you were playing in a league in Saskatoon or Regina or Moose Jaw or whatever, most of the people that played in those leagues originated from small towns or farming communities,
Yes.
and then moved into those big cities, so-called big cities in Saskatchewan, um, to play or to work or whatever, and then they continued on playing. So I just think, um, right now the focus is on trying to maintain what we have, and that's so important because without those teams, we have nothing.
Hmm.
But it might have to be a case of where you kind of step back and say, where should we be throwing a lot of our emphasis at? We might have to say we have to build that base up again in
Hmm.
order to take care. If you have a strong grassroots base, the elite should take care of itself eventually. Because if you're
Yeah.
playing, if you're playing and you get good enough at a grassroots level, a lot of times people just want to continue on with that. What's the next step for me? How do I get on a competitive team, or how do I get to provincials, or geez,
Yeah.
I'd like to play at nationals one time in my life. How do I get there? So I do think that that's where we have to maybe start to look at, once again, not excluding what the great programs that we have out there. Um, but putting on putting on tournaments in, rural Saskatchewan, getting 3 or 4 towns together and say, hey, I know you guys never played broomball before, but we're coming out there with one of our loaner kits and we've talked to the rec board and we're doing this and let's just see what happens. And, who knows, maybe something like that spurs on a fun recreational mixed league or a drop-in Thursday night league or something like that. So,
Mhm.
um,
Ye-
yeah,
Yeah, it's a big thing to get them to continue playing. I know recently, I say 2020, my team was comprised of a lot of ex hockey players, my U20 team that I coached. And then they went on, they finished playing 2 years ago and they started their own intermediate team. And they're planning to play a couple years intermediate and move forward to playing elite. And that's just all started from playing from juvenile. And now they just
yeah,
wanted to keep playing after that. And then same with one of the other juvenile teams, the Panthers from here. They lost, I think, 6 or 7 graduated from their team last year, and so they started their own intermediate team as well. So we've got 2 brand new intermediate teams in the last 2 years, which is just in our small area. Like we're all pretty much out of the Finch area, which is Finch Youth Broomball is that's a town of 500 people, and we've got I don't know how many teams within a 20-kilometer radius of this 500 population town. So it's pretty cool.
So,
and that's, I think that's kind of the way it is. And I know that's the way it is in Saskatchewan too. You take Odessa with, I don't know, was there 200-300 people there, Chad? Maybe not even, right? If Bruno used to maybe be 800 or 900, I think they're
Yeah.
down to 600 or something like that too. But it's the town, but it's also the farms around it and everybody
Yeah.
else that gets involved, and that's really what makes it go. I know when I was young, you just, if you were in that school, you played. It wasn't,
Yeah.
and somebody that had never played sports before, we needed that 12th guy to have a team, so you just dragged them along and threw some shoes on him. And I think that's kind of the way it is in a lot of small towns in Canada as far as broomball is concerned.
Yeah.
You get your buddy to come out and all of a sudden you've got a team and you start off for fun and then you realize, hey, we're not so bad at this. Let's go to a tournament. Let's see what we can do. So
Yeah. I don't know anybody from the city that plays broomball that isn't from a small town that just happened to move there. Like even the
yes,
Ottawa Nationals, I don't know if
yeah,
there's anybody that lives in Ottawa. They all live near us. Like Ottawa Nationals and Lacombe, some of us
yeah,
live 5 minutes from each other. Like it's I don't know any city guys that are really
it's
big into the
definitely a real
broomball.
sport. It's
Yeah.
definitely a real sport, and I
Yeah.
know some of those things. Like if you think back in the heyday, what we're gonna call broomball as being the heyday in late 70s, 80s, you had a farm that was, you had a farm every 3 miles, and on that farm you had probably anywhere from 3 to 6 to 7 kids on that one farm. Now out here, way it's looking now, you've got a farmyard maybe every 15 miles apart, and there is 1 to 2 kids with a bunch of hired men. You know,
Yeah. That's
there's nobody around, and that's
yeah.
just it, right? Like there's nobody
Everyone
stuff to do that anymore.
everyone's selling their head off to and then
Yeah,
just renting and just doing cash crop and
yeah,
retiring off that, and
exactly.
their kids go to the city. And yeah.
So now, Scott, you mentioned about some challenges that you're taking on, right? But what are some of the biggest ones that you can see so far that you've encountered this year doing what you're doing? Like, is it equipment? Is it just interest in total funding?
uh, I when I yeah, I've done present. So in Saskatchewan, there's within the Sask sports system, there's 9 sport districts in the province. Um, and they're all kind of administered. They have some staff that helps with some recreation administration, that type of thing. So I've contacted all 9 districts, and probably 4 or 5 of them I did huge Zoom presentations to various recreation directors in some, like in these small towns, or recreation board president, volunteer presidents, and uh, they all and so they all, what I found was a lot of people sitting around those tables, or if I actually not only did Zoom sessions, but I actually went to some of them, um, and did in-person presentations. People are my age or a bit younger, a bit older, and they all know about broomball. They all said somebody in their community used to play, or they used to play and moved to the city, or so. So the it's not that people don't know about broomball. There seems to be a generational gap right now where a lot of people, like say I'm 60, and I'm talking to 15, 60-year-olds that are in these communities, and their kids though did not play. So you have a bunch of 30, 40-year-olds or 25-year-olds that haven't played, and now their kids, or a 30-year-old has a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old, depending on when they got married or when they started having kids. Their kids are now playing hockey. So it's almost like a generation or two that just kind of not missed the boat. We missed the boat on it because there was broom ball being played. But it's like when I quit playing, I have a son that's 33 years old. He's never ever played.
Oh wow.
So, and you think somebody who like me who loves the game, he played soccer. He loves soccer. So, and he still plays soccer to this day.
Now, if we can step away from missing that boat again, what stopped you from putting your son into broomball? Was it the lack of spots to play, or what was it? We got to think the way you were thinking so that it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, no, I maybe I pushed him too hard to try and play.
Ah.
He, of course, at that time, there wasn't any, it's like any Canadian kid, you start playing hockey when you're 5 or 6 or whatever the case may be. So, and there was no broom ball at that age. So I put him into hockey. He didn't really like it. He played for a couple of years. Of course, I was devastated that he didn't like hockey as somebody that played minor hockey my whole life, and still do to this day. Uh, Not very good, but I still play. And then of course, the next bunch of his buddies at school and at 7 or 8 years old were playing soccer. So he got into soccer. He got to be pretty good at it. He was on a travel team. And so he just kept on playing soccer. So that was one case where he there was when he got into sport, there was no broom ball at that for that in that age group, right? And then he just got into it and he got good at it and he just kept on playing. And good on him. He still plays and he's 33 years old playing in a Div 3 league or something like that. So yeah, so that I think that was the case. And of course we live in the city, so there is no broom ball
Mm.
in
Yeah.
there is broom ball in Regina. I shouldn't say that. There's a mixed league, and of course Odessa has their men's league of 4 teams, just about a half an hour outside of Regina or 3/4 an hour outside of Regina. But there is no youth like stuff unless you want to go up to Odessa and play, and it's a 45-minute drive and not the end of the world. But too
Yeah.
many in the big cities right now. Nobody broom ball's it's a non-starter just because it's too expensive to rent ice, and but yet people surprisingly will find the money to pay for hockey. So
Yeah. 10 times the cost for a year.
yeah,
I remember we told one of our players that switched from hockey to broomball. We told them the cost for the year, and they immediately thought that was per month. It was like 600 for the year, and they're like, so like 6,000, and like no, like 600. That's it.
yeah.
And it's once you, but it's just being able to it's cheaper generally in the smaller communities because the ice time I know is cheaper. That's why generally when we host our tournaments down here, we do it in Cornwall, which is a city but smaller than Ottawa, and the ice times are a
Yeah.
lot cheaper than what they are in the city. So
I mean, in Saskatchewan, all the tournaments are hosted in small towns, like without exception. They're in Odessa or they're in Bruno or in Aberdeen or although Aberdeen is close to Saskatoon, so it's a bit more expensive. But Big River, Debden, they're all the places that are small towns. Everybody's the 1,000 population or under,
yeah,
and that's where it's being hosted. So the challenge is when you have a tournament like that is where do you put people for accommodations and stuff like that. But most of those communities are beside a bigger center, so there you do find accommodations. But yeah, like even hosting provincials now, they're never in Saskatoon or Regina. It's too expensive at $300 an hour or whatever. Ice is nobody, you can't afford to pay
yeah,
for it. And if you were going to do that, then you'd have to charge the teams an astronomical amount in their registration fees to cover the costs, and you lose more people that way.
yeah. Although when you guys do host the nationals out there, the facilities at the university there, beautiful, great setup when you guys
Oh
when you
yeah,
do
on
the
our
big
at the
tournaments like
exhibition
that.
grounds, yeah, at the Cooperator Center. Yeah, when you have, is it 6 or 7 ice surfaces all in one building? That's Oh, in Saskatoon, yeah, at the university,
Yes.
yeah. It's absolutely wonderful there too.
Just being able to walk from the arenas. Oh, if you
Yeah.
guys hosted every year, I'd be happy. So,
I
um,
don't think the people putting it on and volunteering would say that, but
yeah, that's what I mean. It's if it's out there, that means I don't have to help.
right.
But no, you guys do a lovely job hosting out there, and yeah, we do the same thing for our small tournaments as well. Like I've got one coming up this weekend in Almont, and I'm sure you guys don't know where Almont is unless you've been there for
I
a
do.
tournament. Have you been there for a tournament, Tad? Or
I've never been there for a tournament, but I've been there. I've been at
oh,
the rink.
okay. Oh, for broomball or
Yep.
yeah, okay, yeah. It's
Didn't play though, just watched.
okay, yeah. It's a beautiful small town, but it's just a small old barn, and that's a great spot for tournaments. And George Brown puts one out, puts one there every year, so we'll go out and play, and that's that. So, what does your vision for the future of broomball in your community look like? Like in the next, your plans that you've got ahead, do you see this being like a 5 year plan for the sport to really grow, or is it going to be kind of a generation, like 15 years before you get to see the growth that you want? What's your timeline looking like?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, I
Uh,
need to. I need to. This is very political. I know you got to be able to do your job.
uh,
You got to meet your expectations. So be careful what you say.
I, I, I mean, yeah, I think if 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 we kind of take that step back and really look at what we need for growth, um, and kind of look outside the box, I don't I see yeah, and there's no reason why I see that mixed category as one that would be the easiest to kind of get going, or to increase. We might have to look at a recreational type category for our co-ed or mixed. If I'm going out to nowhere, Saskatchewan, and I actually help some town or something get a fun league going, and they say, "Hey, is there a provincials?" And we say, "Yep." So maybe out of that two or three teams that are in that town in this fun drop-in league, and they want to actually enter provincials,
Put a mixed team
they're
together.
going to show up at our provincials and lose bad, right?
That's
So
cool.
so we don't want that to happen because then we'll never see them at a provincials again. So and we used to have kind of a recreational category and an elite category. In fact, at one time I think we had three mixed
Three
categories where
divisions.
you
Yep.
you
There's
could have nobody that played and in an A provincials or elite provincials. You could have two or three people on your team that play, and then one was just open. It was all out, you
Okay,
know,
wow, that's a good idea. Yeah.
and of course that requires a lot of ice time in a weekend, a
Mhm.
lot of, you know, and then has the teams slowly disappeared, or we just went back to one big provincials or whatever. So, but it might be something that we have to look at. We might have to look at um, different ways of obtaining them as members. Um, we don't want to so-called scare people away as soon as they say, "Yeah, we want to have a league." Well, this is what it's going to cost you. And if you want to be a member of the Broomball Association, this is your registration fees, and you have to pay refs this amount of money, and so on and so forth. So and I don't know how we do that. I think it's just, but it's time to have that conversation, I think, where we just have to step back and make it easier. And I know there's so many, liability issues and liability factors nowadays. But I just think we have to make it
More accessible.
more inviting, right? And
Mm.
more grassroots again,
Yeah.
to get those teams back, or those communities back.
Yeah, I find some of the CBF rules are kind of outdated when that are kind of still set from when we had giant communities playing and lots of teams playing that don't need to be instilled in some of the smaller leagues and stuff like that. If we still wanted them to be part of the SBA or CBF and stuff like that, but
I'm curious
it's
what
a
rules those are, Cam.
well, I remember one. I think it just got changed recently in our area where you couldn't pick up players for our regionals from a rec team. I forget what the reasoning was, but there was too many
Is that a
rec teams.
CBF rule or is that an
Oh,
Ontario?
sorry, I should have said OBA rules. Yes,
Okay.
sorry.
Okay. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if there is something wrong, I want to hear about them because we want to. Honestly, ask Scott. I want to grow this sport, and whatever we can do to make it easier to get members, I want to. Like if it's
If
starting,
anybody's got any ideas, throw them in the comments right here.
yeah,
We'll read them,
yeah,
or somebody will.
yeah. So, but I
You
mean,
know,
like, you know what I mean? Like, if
Yeah.
it's starting a rec league, let's do that. Or
Mhm.
having some bylaws around rec players, and
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. More
you
more
know,
of changing
yeah,
some things like that,
yeah,
adding things.
and policies. Like, absolutely. Like, I know we need those bylaws and policies in place for our membership or our association to help us,
Mhm.
but they're there to help us, not hinder
Mhm.
us. And
Mhm.
we need to do whatever it takes to make sure that we can keep this sport alive and keep going.
Yeah.
Like, I our issue with the centers is ice time, right? Or the big centers is getting ice. So in Saskatchewan, it's hit or miss with weather in the winter. So running an outdoor league all year long is not an option in the winter. But maybe we can run an outdoor league starting, you know, the last week of February and into, the end of March, just a month or a month and a half long league for on outdoor rinks where it's nicer outside in the evenings. And if there is a little bit of water on it at the end of the league, so be it. It makes it fun. Then when you get the players invested and they get, it in their blood, as I'd like to say, in their bones, they want to do something different. And then they need to run with it and organize it and make it their own.
Yeah.
I,
I,
I think
I sorry, go
one
ahead,
one of
Scott.
the things that I've noticed in talking to some of the recreation, the paid recreation directors in some of these smaller towns, um, in Saskatchewan, like I'm talking maybe small towns like 1,000 people or whatever that actually have a paid recreation director or 50, is they've told me, and it's something to think about. Any place that has artificial ice, it's going to be expensive. So they're saying in Saskatchewan, we still have a lot of communities that have natural ice surfaces. So their ice gets in as soon as it gets cold enough, because that's when it can freeze. So, December 1st, December 10th, and it lasts till March 1st, March 10th, maybe. So you got about a 3-month window. And what they're suggesting is if you want to get 2 or 3 smaller towns together and have a fun league where you have wings and beer after and they take turns hosting or whatever, um, those are the communities where you should maybe be targeting rather than going after places that have artificial ice. Because if you have natural ice, a lot of times the city teams, whether it's hockey or whatever, don't rent natural ice surfaces because they don't know if they're even going to have it or what time it's, here it's coming in. So that might be something to think about. I know, places like Odessa and Bruno who have artificial ice. Bruno's about an hour outside of Saskatoon. Odessa is 3/4 an hour, half hour outside of Regina. Their ice time is still, it's relatively inexpensive compared to city ice, but it's still probably a bit more than you would pay somewhere down the highway that has natural ice. So that's just something that I've been thinking about lots, that, if we can find 2 or 3 communities in an area that have natural ice, maybe we just go to them and say, we want to get broom ball going in your community or your communities. And they say, what are you talking about? And we just bombard them. Like, here's equipment. We'll have refs come out once a week, whatever. And we get some grants and get them. And, maybe that's the first year program that we do with them. And they say in the second year, you're now going to be responsible for this or that. But, that's just one idea that I've been throwing around in my head to go after some of these naturalized communities. So,
Yeah, well, Scott, I'm glad you've got lots of ideas. I just hope you have the help from your community, and if there's anybody watching this from your area that can help you with implement those ideas, it'd be great for the sport. Because I know even just having those, we have actually 15 minutes from my house, we have an outdoor rink where there is free broom ball for, I think it's 6 hours a week. There's one night where there's 4 hours, and one day morning, I think it's 2 or 4 hours as well, and that's just for broom ball, and it's completely free. And so things like that are pretty cool that we're lucky to have out here. And if you're able to find somewhere in your area that has scheduled spots, like we have this outdoor rink has scheduled for just skating, for just shinny, for just broom ball and stuff like that. And then they also rent out a couple hours here and there, and they actually give I think broom ball is $10 an hour cheaper than it is if you rent it for hockey because they don't have to use the Zamboni after. So
Right.
there's some cool options, and if you're able to get ideas like that out to those communities, could really be helpful. So
yeah. Okay. Well, down to the last question, Scott. The same one we ask everyone on this beautiful podcast of ours, and that is, what is your personal best broomball memory? I know you probably got several, and it's hard
Wow,
to
narrow
narrow
it
it
down to
down to
one.
one. But we'll maybe break the rules and give you two if you want.
I think I might have two of them. One of as far as a competitor is concerned, is when our team from Regina finally beat the Bruno Axemen in a provincial final. We got outshot probably, and I'm not exaggerating, probably 25-8. And we had this goaltender that some of our younger guys knew, had played junior hockey goaltender before. And I'll never forget when he came out to our first practice, our mouths just dropped open. We said, this might be one of the best broomball goalies we've ever seen. And so, yeah, I'd say, I don't know if we deserved to win that game, but we kind of played them the way we knew we had to keep them to the outside. They're going to get their scoring chances. And we had to we beat them 2-1, and we scored on 2 of our 8 shots. So that's kind of just the way it went. And I think the other big moment in my so-called career, when it was coaching, when I got hired by the Saskatchewan Broomball Association when I was 23 years old, right out of post-secondary school, to be they got funding from Sask Sport to have they called a high performance program. And so part of what that consisted of is forming an all-star team of boys and girls. And we had an end goal. Our end goal was to go to a tournament in Quebec. And that was and was that 1989 or 1990, something like that. And of course, we went to Quebec, and I think they thought that, why is a team from Saskatchewan even coming to our tournament? They thought they were going to beat us, I think, quite handily. And we went there, and of course, we had all the best from Saskatchewan, but we went there and won the tournament 2 consecutive years in a row at I think it was called L'Assomption.
Hey, I'm going to a tournament there next weekend. So
okay, so
yeah,
so we went there with these 2 all-star teams, boys and girls. That time I think it was junior. It was called junior. I think it was U19 or U18. I think it was
that's the
U18.
tournament. I'm coaching at that tournament next weekend.
Oh, okay. So
so
we went there and we won both times. And I guess from that, we started hosting what we called the Canadian Junior Open in Regina.
Oh, wow.
And that was the precursor to having juvenile nationals. We had teams come from Minnesota, Quebec, few play on, of course, Manitoba, and BC, Alberta, and there was even a team at one time that came from Yellowknife, all U18 at the time. So,
Wow.
so yeah, so just the kind of my involvement with that to kind of help get junior broomball a national level going. But I say beating Bruno and being from Bruno was a big thing for me. And coaching those 2 high performance teams and winning in Quebec was pretty huge.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Well,
Pretty special.
between Scott, Chad, and all the other members on the SBA that I've met, it sounds like the sport's in good hands out there, and I hope you guys get the help that the sport deserves and needs out there. So, pretty cool.
Yeah,
Well,
we're trying our hardest, that's for sure.
that's all you can do. You're only one man each, but put a bunch of you together, and you can be a whole 6-headed community out there or something.
We're trying.
All right, Scott, thanks for joining us, and everyone, thanks for watching. And don't forget to join us next month when we meet another lovely couple or two who met through broomball and are still in love to this day, probably.
Yes, it's our Valentine's special.
Yeah, I'll wear my heart-shaped glasses.
God, help us all.
Bye, guys.
Okay, see you guys. Thanks, Scott. Okay.